Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another WWE PLE pay-per-view, whatever you want to call them, predictions video. And today is a very special predictions video. This is the second ever WWE All Women's PLE Evolution 2. Now, there's currently, at the time of this video, 7 matches. I'm guessing that's all there is going to be. But that's a good bit, more than most WWE shows get. So we're going to go and get into all 7 matches. And we're going to go ahead and, I guess, like I said, get into it. Kicking off first is for the NXT Women's Championship. Now, unfortunately, I do not own Jacy Jayne's action figure, and I do not believe Jordynne Grace has an action figure. But nonetheless, it is the NXT Women's Champion, Jacy Jayne versus the Juggernaut, Jordynne Grace. I'm getting their names confused. Anyhow, though, this matchup, I think it's pretty obvious who's going to win. A lot of people are saying it's going to be Jacy Jayne because, everybody says that, I'm getting their names confused. Jordynne Grace is ready for the main roster, but I don't think that's the case. I don't watch NXT that often, but I'm going to go ahead and say that Jordynne Grace wins. WWE clearly has a lot of faith in her, and I think she's going to walk out as the NXT Women's Champion, carry that for a little bit, and maybe similarly to Ethan Page, lose the belt eventually, and then head up to the main roster. Obviously, that hasn't quite happened yet, but I'm filming this also before NXT Great American Bash, so I'm going to go ahead and predict that also. But anyhow, for the NXT Women's title matchup, I'm going to predict that it will be Jordynne Grace beating Jacy Jayne to win the NXT Women's Championship. Next up, it is the Women's #1 Contendership title match for a title at Clash at Paris Battle Royal, as it is currently Zelina Vega, Candice LeRae, B-Fab, Piper Niven, Chelsea Green, Michin, and Nia Jax of the figures that I have. It is also, however, Stephanie Vaquer, Ivy Nile, Brie Bella, Natalia, Maxine Dupree, Kalani Jordan, Jada Parker, Lola Vice, Lash Legend, Izzy Dame, Tatum Paxley, as well as Alba Fire, and the new United States Champion, Julia. Now, for this matchup, it's very interesting because with the exception of Nikki Bella, who I don't believe was supposed to be in this matchup, most of them are mid-card women, like B-Fab, for example. She's just kind of really been floating around, mid-card or tag team wrestlers. And I don't believe Nikki Bella is going to win this matchup, similarly to the fact that I don't think that someone like a Nia Jax is going to win this matchup, and that's the fact that they really weren't supposed to be in this matchup. I mean, Nia Jax is a bit of a different story, but for Nikki Bella, I don't believe she's going to win the matchup, basically for the fact that Liv Morgan was supposed to be her opponent, and I don't think they ever had any plans to put Nikki Bella in the women's title division. All the plans were just to go ahead and, have her do a one-off match. I don't think she's going to win the Battle Royal. Now, as for who I'd want to win the Battle Royal, I'd love to say someone like a Zelina Vega, like a Michin, like a Chelsea Green, someone, just kind of out of right field. But I'm going to go ahead and predict that it is going to be Stephanie Vaquer. WWE is seemingly pushing her. She was in the Money in the Bank ladder match. She was in the Queen of the Ring. She's getting vignettes, on Monday Night Raw. So I think Stephanie Vaquer is going to win the Battle Royal, and we are going to see a new #1 contendership between who I predict is going to win the women's title later versus Stephanie Vaquer at Clash in Paris. Coming up next, we have Jade Cargill versus the new Miss Money in the Bank, Naomi, in a no-holds-barred matchup. And this matchup, at least personally for me, kind of came out of nowhere. I've been watching SmackDown since WrestleMania, but except for, a couple failed cash-ins courtesy of Jade by Naomi, I don't think these two have really had much of a feud since WrestleMania. But I mean, obviously, they've gotten in each other's business, but they haven't really started getting into many brawls or anything up until recently. But nonetheless, it is a no-holds-barred match between these two. And as much as I would like to say I predict Naomi to win this matchup, I'm just going to have to look at the obvious fact that it is most likely 99% chance that Jade Cargill wins this matchup simply because she just won the Queen of the Ring. She's the #1 contender, and she's going to go on to face the women's champion at SummerSlam. So I feel like this is just another win for Jade Cargill, which really sucks because it kind of feels, at least to me, that she's been just running through the women's division a bit too quick, considering this time last year she was in the tag team division. So, she's kind of just being treated like a main eventer out of nowhere. But nonetheless, I'm going to predict that Jade Cargill is going to take the women's title off of Naomi. Actually, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Nobody's taking the women's title off of Naomi. Naomi's not even women's champion, but I am predicting Jade Cargill is going to beat Naomi. Next up, we have the Women's Intercontinental Championship match between Bayley and Becky Lynch, as well as the woman who I do not have an action figure of yet, Lyra Valkyria, in a Women's Intercontinental Championship triple threat match. Now, personally, I feel like out of all the matches that have been on the pay-per-view, this matchup, maybe besides Naomi and Jade, has had the best build to it. This matchup, they've been building to it every single week, having classics, whether it's Becky and Lyra, Bayley and Lyra, or Becky and Bayley. They've just had great matchups every single week. I was there live for one of them whenever it was Bayley versus Lyra for the number one contendership match. And I'm really surprised that they, turned Bayley and Lyra against each other so quickly. But I guess for this matchup to make sense, they needed all three women to be on a different page. But anyhow, though, these three women have been having some of the best work of their career. And I really hope they main event, but I'm pretty sure it's not how much 100% confirmed at the time of recording, but I'm pretty sure these women are not going to main event. But anyhow, though, enough ranting about that. It's time to get into who I think is going to win. And as much as I think Lyra was a great champion, I don't feel like she needs to win the belt back immediately. She just lost it. And whenever it comes down to it as well, I do not believe Bayley's going to win it. As much as I think Bayley should win it, I feel like Bayley should beat Becky, singularly down the line in a one-on-one match to really solidify that Women's Intercontinental Championship. So by process of elimination, it ain't Bayley, it ain't Lyra. I'm predicting Becky Lynch is going to retain the Women's Intercontinental Championship, hold it probably past SummerSlam, maybe till Clash in Paris, maybe even a bit longer, depending on how long WWE wants to, keep this character of Becky Lynch going. So my prediction is I can finally knock over a figure because the winner is actually on the screen. I'm predicting that it is going to be Becky Lynch to retain the Women's Intercontinental Championship. The next matchup on the show is the Fatal 4-Way for the Women's Intercontinental the Women's Tag Team titles, between the current champions of the Judgment Day, Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez, the Kabuki Warriors, Zarya and Sol Ruca, and Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. Now, personally, for most people, a lot of people, I guess, you would say, immediately are going to go Alexa and Charlotte on this one. And I'm not going to say I'm not going for that, but we first got to discuss the fact that, obviously, I didn't catch most of SmackDown last night, which is why some of these predictions might be a bit off, for how exactly the matches are going down. But I did see, however, Alexa Bliss won a Fatal 4-Way last night involving, one half of every single tag team. Now, unfortunately, that normally means that if you win the matchup beforehand, you aren't going to win at the actual show, which makes me a little less confident that Alexa and Charlotte are going to win the tag titles, especially considering the Kabuki Warriors just reunited, and then they also might want to keep the titles on Roxanne and Raquel just to keep the Judgment Day storyline going. So for me, I feel like any of the three teams on the screen could win the titles. I doubt Zarya and Sol Ruca will win the titles, considering they are from NXT. If they were called up to the main roster, I could see it, but I just don't see them bringing the tag titles down to NXT, especially because now they're going through all the effort to make them somewhat mean something again. But I feel like for this one, it could be any of these three teams, but just for the possibility that I can be right for this one, I'm going to predict Alexa and Charlotte are going to walk out the women's tag team champions, just because WWE loves to do these, weird put-together tag teams that work out for a little bit, like Sami Zayn in the Bloodline. So I feel like for this match, I'm just going to predict the most obvious choice of Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. Up next, we have a matchup that could be the main event. Like I said, at the time of recording, it hasn't been confirmed what the main event is. However, I'm very excited for this matchup. But, Trish, Tiffany, they had their tag team matchup earlier in the year at Elimination Chamber. And I really felt like that was, kind of one of Trish's best matches since coming back. Not necessarily for in-ring, but for the storytelling part of it. Where, because you look at someone like Tiffany Stratton and they kind of remind you of someone like a Trish Stratus, which is why I feel like this matchup could really work, especially because Trish Stratus is going to do a huge deal to put Tiffany Stratton over and retain the women's title. Because let's be honest here, Trish Stratus is not winning the title. This might be the easiest matchup to predict on the whole entire show, besides maybe Jade and Naomi. this matchup, though, is still going to be great. You know, it's just going to be a giant exhibition match, but it's still going to be great. You know, there's going to be some close calls, but at the end of the day, I'm going to predict that Tiffany Stratton will still be women's champion, and she will eventually go on to face Jade Cargill at SummerSlam. That's going to be my prediction for that. We'll see if I'm right in about a month when we do our SummerSlam prediction matches. But for now, I'm predicting Tiffany Stratton is going to walk out the still, I guess, WWE Women's Champion. And then we get to this matchup. Now, like I said, it hasn't been confirmed, but I do feel like WWE is leaning towards this being the main event simply for the fact that it is Rhea Ripley. WWE loves Rhea Ripley. You know, Rhea Ripley obviously is the biggest star in WWE, probably definitely in the women's division and possibly in the men's division, only maybe behind Cody Rhodes and possibly John Cena currently. But at least for now, I believe this will end up being the main event. And really, as much as I want Io Sky to retain, I don't think she's going to. They did the story on Raw where they said that Rhea Ripley has never been able to beat Io Sky, and I don't think that is going to continue. I think that Rhea Ripley will be the new women's champion. Unfortunately, it seems like in almost every single one of these videos, I have to put down Io Sky and say I think she's losing. However, she does seem to retain a good bit more, and I really wish she could make it to SummerSlam, you know? But, so I am predicting that Rhea Ripley is going to beat Io Sky to win the women's championship, and providing she makes it past SummerSlam, I do think if she wins the Battle Royal, she will go on to face Stephanie Vaquer at Clash in Paris. But at least for now, I'm predicting that Rhea Ripley is going to walk out the new Women's World Champion in WWE. And yeah, guys, this has been my predictions for WWE Evolution 2. Once again, I'm predicting Jordynne Grace is going to be the new NXT Women's Champion. Stephanie Vaquer is going to win the number 1 contendership Battle Royal. Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss are going to win the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. Becky Lynch is going to retain the Women's Intercontinental title. Jade Cargill is going to beat Naomi to end that feud. Tiffany Stratton is going to retain the women's title against Trish Stratus. And then in what's probably going to be the main event, Rhea Ripley will beat Io Sky to walk out the new WWE Women's Champion. But that's been my predictions, guys. Leave your predictions down in the comments below. I will see you guys next time. I thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.